Okay, today we're going to do Psalm 25, and we'll also be finishing Genesis. We'll do 49 and 50, finishing that book out. 25 is a strong psalm about, unto thee, O Lord, I will lift up my soul, O God, in whom I trust. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. We've seen, like I've said, we see patterns in these psalms going back and forth again: majesty, humility, integrity, my righteousness. Then he calls himself a worm. I am unrighteous. Forgive me of the sins. He tends to go back and forth, as all of us do. He's very human in these psalms. This is why this book is unique in all of literature. There is a sense of humanity to this man that we can all relate to, no matter who you are, no matter where you live. And so he's lifting up his soul to the Lord. He's trusting in him because he has enemies around him. Once again, we've seen that before, where his enemies had gone around him and they had laid snares for him. They were like bulls with him. They were like crouching lions ready to pounce. He was trapped in a snare. You get the idea that, oh, no one can release me from this but God. Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth and teach me, for thou art the God of my salvation. When we think of salvation, it isn't just not going to hell and getting into heaven. It's salvation in the moment, salvation in the trial, salvation in whatever we're going through. Do we see God as our salvation for the problem at hand, or do we fix it ourselves and just say, bless me, Lord? Instead of, how can you be my Savior? And it's not sitting back also and just waiting for him to deal all the cards. How can you help me with the finances? How can you help me as I deal with my wife or husband? How can you tell me I deal with my kids or my parents? How can you help me dealing with employers, or as an employer, dealing with employees? Lead me in your truth. He says, thy truth. Teach me, for thou art the God. Again, it's your truth, not my truth. We hear this today of your truth, my truth. Well, there is really only one truth, and that is empirical. The empirical facts on the floor, on the road, on the way, those are the facts we deal with, not just what we think is true or what we hope is true or what we need to be true. But what is the truth? And that's truth is an empiricalism, by the way. When Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he was making an empirical stance, not a subjective stance. And we, many times, even in Christianity, have subjectivisms as opposed to an objective truth. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore will he teach sinners in his ways. The meek he shall guide in judgments, and the meek he shall teach in his way. For thy name's sake, O Lord, pardon mine iniquity, for it is great. Once again, there's humility here. And forgiving me for your name's sake, not just for me. Because you are a great God, forgive me. It bodes well for you. It shows the nations who you are. It's for your name that you should forgive my iniquity. What man is he that feareth the Lord? Whom he, God, teach in the way that he shall choose. His soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. That him shall he teach in the way that he, the second man, shall choose that way. So you have to teach someone something so they can choose that way. Again, we see the word choose, free will here. And his soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. The secret of the Lord is with them that fear him. Again, if you want to know how God operates, how he motivates, how he does things, you have to get into fearing, respecting, honoring him. Fear isn't just, I'm afraid that you'll hit me. Honor is a form of recognition, is respect, and it is a form of fear, because you are mightier than I. My acceptance of your might over who I am. Mine eyes were ever towards the Lord, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. Here he is again, that imagery of being caught in a snare, but God will pull me out of the net. Turn thee upon me and have mercy on me, for I am desolate and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. O bring me out of my distresses. Look upon mine affliction and my pain, and forgive all my sins. Consider mine enemies, that they are many, and they hate me with cruel hatred. Keep my soul to deliver me. Let me not be ashamed, for I put my trust in thee. I love that one. Save me. Don't let me be ashamed of trusting in you. And a man who trusts in Christ, who trusts in Yahweh, who trusts in Jehovah, this God will never be ashamed of his trust in that God. Redeem Israel, O Lord, out of her troubles. out of his troubles. It's his, not her. Israel is referred to the nation with a masculine pronoun. So we see this again, looking to God. There is humility. There is some struggle. There is, in thee do I trust. And normally when we trust, we're in a time of chaos. It's easy to trust God when everything's going fine, but when things start flipping around, that's when it becomes harder to trust God. So here he is, he's in a sense of needing to trust. And that's the psalm is about trust. And it's about choosing, it's about recognizing where God is, who he is, that he is the truth. Finishing up in Genesis, Jacob, who is Israel, is getting ready to bless the 12. And he's already blessed Manasseh and Ephraim. So therefore he's blessed Joseph. He breaks that into two portions. And later on we'll see that Manasseh and Ephraim become legal tribes. They become their own separate entities, even though they did not come directly from Jacob physically. But they did come indirectly through the son Joseph. And many times we can see these two nations are a bit of a typology of the Gentiles who come in through Christ and are accepted into Israel as being in Christ and equal to the Jews. We'll see that work out when Christ comes back and pulls the Gentile church and the Jewish bride together, and everything works beautifully. So he starts blessing and gather them together. Reuben, he starts with his firstborn. You're the beginning of my strength and the excellency. You are unstable as water. But he tells him that he went and defiled his father's bed. He went up to the concubine, and therefore that puts him a little bit on the out. So he's not as trusted with the birthright. The birthright you'll see will fall to Judah, the fourth son. Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty. Then again, referring back to Shechem. He even talks about some other cruelty that these men did. They slew a man, and in their self-will, he digged down a wall. So they tore down a wall because they wanted to. It looks like they did two things here. They killed a man, and they destroyed a wall in their self-will. This is something that they wanted to do. They're very strong-willed boys. And so they're kind of on the out. Now, they still get blessings, they still get lands, but they're not given the promise that is, again, filtered down from God, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. But the main promise will fall in Judah. Judah, of whom the brethren shall praise, thy hand shall be on the neck of thine enemies, and the father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou hast gone up and stooped down. He crouched as a lion, as an old lion who roosed him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. The kingship, when a kingship happens, it will be through the line of Judah. And it will never leave Judah. And again, Jesus is in the line of Judah. So is David. So was Solomon. All of the kings were in the line of Judah. And so this has been fulfilled. We've seen this. That there was no king of Israel that was not in Judah. And a legitimate king. We had people in Israel, after they split, the king was whoever, but in the obedient Israel that later became Judah, and after the nation split, we see this kingness staying in this messianic line. Binding his foal unto the vine and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He will have choice vines. He will be able to travel and have choiceness, and he will wash his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. He will live in excellency, and he will travel among the grapes, which was a sign of kingliness. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth shall be white like milk. Then he starts talking about Zebulun, that he will be by the sea. Issachar is a strong and crouching down. He has two burdens. Issachar is going to be burdened down with responsibilities, which is okay. He saw that the rest was good and the land was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear it, became a servant of the tribute. He saw the power of the land and concentrated on the land. Dan shall judge people as one of the tribes. Dan shall be as a serpent by the way, that biteth the horse's heels. He will be always keeping things going. Gad is a troop. Asher, his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali shall be like a hind, let loose, he shall give goodly words. He blesses these guys pretty powerfully. It's like the first three sons he has something against. Then there's the kingdom of Judah. Then after that, you see the blessings going to the boys are actually pretty strong. The imagery is pretty strong. Joseph is a fruitful brow, and again talking about the two boys inside of Joseph. The archers are sorely grieved that shot at him and hated him, but his bow abodes in strength, and the arms of his hands are strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence he is a shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even though bad things had happened to him, he will be strong. Even by the God of thy father who has helped thee, and by the Almighty who shall bless thee with the blessings, and he shall be blessed. And Benjamin is like a raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Benjamin will be a mighty tribe. They'll be like a wolf that gets after the prey and then divides the spoil among the others. And he blesses them, and he charged them that they would take him back to the cave of Mamre. Remember, we've discussed that. That's where Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Leah, and now he wants to be buried there. So, talks about that field. And Jacob made an end of his commanding his sons. He gathered his feet, and then he passes away. He yields up the ghost and is gathered under his people. So Joseph fell upon his father and wept upon him and kissed, and he had them come and embalm him. And for 40 days they mourned in Egypt for his father. And the Egyptians mourned for them 70 days. So you had 70 days of mourning going on for this great man. And he tells Pharaoh that I need to go and bury my father where he has said he needed to be buried, up in Canaan. Pharaoh lets him go. And he goes with this great entourage. It was so great and there was such mourning that even the neighboring tribes and nations saw what was happening and knew that a great man had passed away. And they mourned for him. And when he returned from Egypt, the brothers thought that maybe this is a chance Joseph will turn against us. And they talk with him, and he hears about it, and he says no. And he says that what you meant for evil, God meant for good. God has turned this around. We've all been blessed. He says, fear not, for am I in the place of God? But you thought evil against me, but God meant it for good. And therefore fear not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them. And we see at the very end here the death of Joseph, that he lived many years. He was able to see not just his kids, not just great kids, but great grandkids and great great grandkids. He lived a long life and was very fruitful. And as he's dying, he says, God will visit you and bring you out of the land that you're in. He remembers the promise that God has made. And he seems like these men also at the very end have a very prophetic understanding. Maybe it's just looking at the whole thing from the end, that God will take them back to the land. God has promised that this land will belong to them. They're not going to stay in Egypt forever. They're going to go back into the land. And he's saying, when you go back, I want you to take my bones with me. I want to go back into the land with you. This is my home. This is where I was born. This is where I belong with my fathers. And I don't want to be left in Egypt alone. And he would be alone. I mean, maybe with his children, but, some of them. But the idea that he wanted to be back into the land. And he died 110 years old when he was embalmed, and they put him in a coffin in Egypt. So they probably set up this sarcophagus or something to hold his bones. They embalmed him, put him in there, and left him, and people knew where it was. Later on, when the Exodus happens, they will go gather up his bones, and they do carry him back, and carry him back into the land. And it's interesting how Genesis ends with, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And again, we see that Genesis ends in a coffin. Christ ended in a coffin, but the Exodus comes, and there's life coming from. So we see again this parallel of what looks like death, finality. Here we are, we're in Egypt, but no, there's seeds of you will not stay in Egypt. And as a Christian, if you think you're in Egypt now, you're not staying in Egypt. That there's life coming, and the life coming is in the Exodus. All of us will have an Exodus. As we leave this life, as we go on, whether it's through rapture or through death, we will have an Exodus. Then we will have a returning. It's called resurrection. But here we have, it's quite interesting that it ends in a coffin. Looks like it's gray, looks like we're done. But when we go into the next book, we'll see life beginning, life from hardship, life from sorrow, life from slavery. We'll be getting into that. But anyway, I love the book of Genesis. It's really great. It begins with life, goes to a coffin, but doesn't stay in the coffin. Thank you.